This is On the Overrun, a podcast about cars and the people around them. Join us for a new episode. Carlo, good to have you on the podcast. Welcome to On the Overrun. For you guys watching, you would have known recently I've been talking a lot of BMW and a lot of German. So I'm very happy to be around, firstly, a different color, which obviously is red, and a different nationality as well, which is Italian. Carlo is a connoisseur and lover and technician of Ferraris, but we'll get into that. But I think first question, obviously welcome, good to have you. We'll get to your introduction now. But what's wrong with Lamborghinis?
Martin, what's wrong? I can't say what's wrong with him. Every brand has its spot. I just think it's lost its soul a little bit, and it's no longer the Italian brand that it used to be. It's now owned by a German company, which is different. It's different. It's nothing. It's just that I'm true to my core. I'm Italian, and I'm a Ferrarista. I've always been one, and Ferrari is my game. Ferrari is what I know, and that's who I am all about.
Okay. Hopefully you get an idea of where the conversation will lead. So if you don't like Ferraris for some reason, I think you might be on the wrong podcast episode, but that's all right. Carlo, you've been working on Ferraris for years. This has been the majority and the bulk of your life, and you have become quite a name in the industry. But I think mainly start us off, who are you, what do you do, and then where did this passion come to be? Where did it start? What car, what person, what race, or going back to some of your earliest memories to do with cars, what can you recall? Where did this passion come to be?
Martin, I suppose it goes back to the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning. 1972, I was still at school, and my name is Carlo Viglietti, for those who don't know me. But basically, I grew up in a family with a lot of brothers, and being the youngest out of all the brothers, everybody they were all into some form of motorsport or engineering side. Or I grew up with modifying Fiats, modifying Alphas, rebuilding cars, and that's my life. Viglietti Motors as a business, we formed the brothers. We formed the business, as many people would know. It started in 1972. I left school in end of 73. In 1974, I joined the business, and I was thrown into the deep end with my brothers and served my apprenticeship, and that's where it all started. I remember my first car being a Fiat 125 Scorpion. That was, the days of high compression pistons, high lift cams, Weber carburetors, and that's where it all started. Yeah.
So a lot of it comes down to the family was into cars.
Yes, I grew up with the smell of petrol around me.
Okay, so over the years you started. Obviously, you didn't start off just with Ferraris. No. You worked your way through Fiats and Alphas and so on.
We started Viglietti Motors in 1972 as a family business. And I remember specifically then, still in my school holidays, going in and out of the workshop, on my way to school. The boys would drop me off, and sometimes I'd come back from school and climb out of my school clothes and then put my overall on. And in those days, we had our business cards printed. We were Viglietti Motors. We were Continental car experts. We called ourselves the Continental car experts because I grew up with, to give you a bit of history of my family, my brothers were very, in those days, 2 or 3 of them were German-trained, Mercedes-Benz trained mechanics. And in my opinion, and it probably still is today, the German way of doing things is probably, like going back to your earlier question about Lamborghini, not that there's anything wrong with them, but the Germans do things right. They have a very strict form of training, and they came from a school of exceptionally well-trained mechanics. Yes. And I was very fortunate to have been grown up and put into that sort of sphere where I had a pool of brothers that had this amazing background of training, and for me to be an apprentice and all of that, I had the best. I was fortunate. I had the best training available to me, whether it was Mercedes-Benz, it was also Fiat training. in those days it was a highly skilled, and probably it still is to today, just a little bit more technical, a little bit more electronic today, the way things have gone. So yes, coming back to that, that was my background. And I was taught to do things right, and if you started a project and you weren't sure, you were halfway through it and you weren't quite sure whether you had done it correctly, well, I was forced to start all over again and start from the beginning, and you make sure that everything is right. There's no shortcuts. And growing up, and particularly my one brother Luigi, he came from the racing fraternity, a lot of motorsport. He had a lot of experience. He was also trained by many well-known figures here in South Africa. One in particular was Doug Ceruri, and he had the racing. He had the that background where the high performance, you get as much out. And one particular memory that I have in the early 70s was watching him tune a set of 6 Weber carburetors on a Ferrari Daytona, and it was just amazing, to see the perfection, and how just the synchronization and how it all came together. It just stuck in my mind. It was like, oh wow, this is something that I want to learn. I want to know how to do these things, and I want to carry this experience through, because it's just amazing to see that.
So it's interesting to hear that your brothers actually started off with a German background when it comes to cars and so on. And then obviously you learned a lot from them, did some experience in some Italian cars as well. Your brother worked a lot in Italian cars.
Yes.
But a question that pops up from a guy who's not mechanical at all. I love and I'm mesmerized by engines and people working on it, and just the mechanics of a car and how it works together. But I know nothing about it. So in the previous days when you started off your apprenticeship, how similar were the different countries in the way they made cars? Like, for your knowledge that you had, could you go work on a Mercedes and on an Italian car, or is it almost a total shift of mind?
Look, in those days, it was a shift of mind. The Mercedes, I didn't do a lot of the German cars. All I'm saying is that they came from that training. They did the Mercedes-Benz background and that sort of thing. When I came into it, I was, as an appy, yes, I worked on Fiats and Alfas, so my background is mostly Italian.
Okay.
In those days, it was the Fiats 124, 125s, all the range of Fiats, the Alfas, so I can say that with their background and the training that they had, it just left a great impression on me and how things were done in the German way of doing things, and how you did things properly. And I think that stood me in good ground for where I am today. But I can say, my working life has been based on Italian cars all my life. I never really. So yes, to answer your question, whether I'd go work on a German car now. I had a phone call this morning, a client asking me about a Lamborghini and that, on a certain car with a certain fuel issue and that sort of thing. And I said to him, look, honestly, I can't really help you because I've never worked on the product. I don't know. I can't give you an answer to your question, and all I can say is, if the manufacturer is saying that you need to do a certain thing, then you need to do it in that certain manner and follow the route that, when people say, well, the part is so expensive, can we not find an alternative part, or is there a substitute? It's a difficult question for me to answer. If you're asking me that on a Ferrari,
yes,
and I will say to you, look, my advice is you go what factory tells you. It's an expensive car. You replace it as factory would recommend, as it's recommended. So, I consider myself an Italian mechanic working on Italian cars, and now obviously my life is evolved in a way that through all the training that I had, the story evolved obviously with Viglietti Motors, and eventually we became Ferrari distributors in 1983, to then becoming the importers in 1997. So yes, I for myself, I served a basic apprenticeship, teaching me on the mechanics, and obviously going to technical schools and all of these tertiary educational levels where, and then you learn about all sorts of cars. You learn about diffs, you learn about gearboxes, which all stood me in good ground. In that same period of apprenticeship, I was fortunate enough that I also did the automotive engineering side. So I learned how to grind a crankshaft. I learned how to rebore a block. I learned how to be very specific on cutting the 3 different angles on the valve seat of a cylinder head. How multi-valves work, how camshaft work, timing variators. So I also had the basic, the knowledge of how to rebuild an engine.
Yes.
And that is now still to this day. On my restorations, I do it all myself.
Yeah.
Apart from obviously the engineering side, which I don't do anymore. I don't have the equipment to do it. But in those days, we had all the equipment, so we would do everything. And I had my brothers who I considered masters at doing what they were doing, teaching me how to do these things. So,
you were under the best leadership.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate.
So I'm intrigued to know, Ferrari, from my perspective, is a very particular brand. They are very specific with what they want and their requirements, and obviously very proud of their cars, and they want to do an excellent job, but also the brand itself they want to preserve as much as possible. So becoming a Ferrari importer back in the day, or distributor, I can imagine firstly that it was very scarce in South Africa to actually become a distributor of Ferraris, but also how have you found the relationship with Ferrari and building that relationship with Ferrari over the years? Has it been, is it a difficult process to actually, I don't know how to say it, but get into their good books or build good relationship with them? Obviously they want stuff done their way, but how has that relationship progressed over the years with Ferrari? How has your involvement been, and what's your experience been?
Yeah. Martin, look, all I can answer your question in the experience that I had up until the point that all right, let me go back a few steps there. The stages when we, in the early stages of 1983, being a distributor and then growing into the importership, yes, they had, and probably still today, very specific requirements. And you did things, you had to do things their way. The way the world has developed today, and it was already starting. We could see things changing. The world changes all the time, and things change, and sometimes not always for the better, but one has to accept the changes. They became where it became a more of a very corporate identity, a very corporate run organization. And when shareholders came in and the business changed, certain things, you lost a lot of the personal touch. My experience with Ferrari was, it was always done on a handshake, and the people we built relationships with people, and amazing with some of those people that are still involved in Ferrari. For me, being out of the game now for the last what is it now, 14 years, I still have a relationship with those people and when I go to Italy, I can still. Yes. We still go and have a glass of wine. We still have a good chat. We all of the same age. We all contemporary. A lot of those guys are now working in what they call the Ferrari Classic department, which Ferrari has been very wise in keeping those people. And Ferrari has a very tight network in that way. Yes. They have probably as an automotive manufacturer, they have the most incredible records of every Ferrari ever built, and that goes back to 1947. You can go to them with a certain particular chassis number, and they will have a record of that car, exactly the build sheet of that car of that time. When I do my restorations, I get the build sheet and exactly what the original specifications were of that car, how it left factory. So I work to very strict parameters when it comes to. I like to do things the way Ferrari liked to do things, but that was also in that time. Things have changed a lot, but I'm sure today it's a lot more of a corporate game, and it's a lot more. It's become a bit of a numbers game. They're far more commercialized. It's about selling cars. The numbers were a lot less in those days. So I would go to factory, I would go for my training, and it would be an amazing experience, because in the whole Ferrari factory. You know, as an outsider coming from South Africa, coming there. Okay, fortunately, I'm Italian, so I speak the language. I fit in. I did fit in. I fitted in very well with the people, and you know, you would get your ticket for the lunch at the canteen as a trainee there, as part of the academy there. You know, your daily ticket to go and have your lunch in the canteen, and there in the canteen there are the directors, and there's the hierarchy of all the Ferrari people that work there. And it was always, you know, hi and a handshake, and you know, come stai, tutto bene, and you know, how's the familia, and you know, so it was a very family, and still, I don't know whether that is still today.
Yes.
I think to some extent it's gone a bit more too commercial. So what can I say? The world, as I said, the world changes all the time.
So speaking about the world changes all the time, obviously I would assume you've had experience of driving some classic but also some modern Ferraris, and also seeing how the cars have adapted, but not just Ferraris in general, but obviously all motor brands had to adapt with the times. And yes, it is a financial game as well, because it's a business that needs to be run, and they need to sell the Purasang so that they can sell the TDFs or the Competiciones or so on.
Exactly.
So with your love for Ferrari and seeing how the company has progressed and how the modern cars that has come out, what is your view, your opinion, your feeling about the current range of Ferraris versus obviously the era that you're used to and working on and have driven in the past? How do you see the current change from a guy who actually has been with Ferrari his whole life?
Martin, they just get faster and faster, and what amazes me is that, you know, I mean, where does it stop?
Yes.
You know, you're getting cars now that are close to 700, 800, 900 brake horsepower that are running around on the roads these days. So a lot more driver aids, a lot more electronic aids. You know, I don't know. I can't really speak from experience and saying that I've driven all the latest Ferraris. I haven't. I've been out of the loop for quite a few years. So I up until probably the 458 Speciale, which was and 599 GDOs, those were the last really special cars that I've had a lot of experience driving around, in particular around racetracks. So the modern car today, from what I've been told and what I've heard from clients, they just get amazingly quicker and quicker. It's a lot more electronic, a lot more driver aid. So I think I consider myself old school, and I think I climb into a Dino or I climb into a Daytona. You know, I've just had the wonderful experience of working on I did a full major service on a 69 Daytona for a client from Pretoria who lives there in the Cape, and you know, to work on a car like that and to go, and it's so mechanical. It's so, even the camshafts are gear driven, you know, and the tappets and the shimming and the carburation. And I did a full major service on that car, and you know, when he got it back, he said to me, he phoned me, he said, you know, Carlo, he says, my car has never, in the 30 years that he's had his car, his car's never gone, he's never performed in the way that it has performed now. You know, so it gives me great satisfaction to know that, and that is so mechanical. You know, it's such an amazing car to drive, and it's got such long gears, and it's such a lot of power. The V12 is just, the sound of it when you drive it without an air cleaner, it's just so amazing. So I think, in a sense, maybe I've been fortunate to be part of an era where a car was, especially a Ferrari, and I mean, I'm speaking for Ferrari now, that it was so mechanical, and so it just so much emotion in the car when you drive it. You know, yes, today they are amazing. Yeah, like I said, they just go faster and faster. They just got more and more power in that. So I can't really speak from experience, like I said to you, but that's the way things are going, and that's the way the cars are. They are faster and faster, and
No, I hear you, definitely. I think also your driver skill necessarily with classical Ferraris probably has to be a bit better than with modern day. With modern day, you have very fast Ferraris, but with electronic aids, obviously it helps a lot.
Yes.
but nevertheless,
Yes.
still awesome cars. But touching on driving experience, can you recall some of the best driving experiences you've had, or whether it be going on a rally or a drive with some friends, or like a dream Ferrari you've had the privilege to drive? What has been some of the best driving experiences you've had?
Well, Martin, to answer that, I would say the top of the list, what most people say the bucket list of driving experiences was having a client who owned a 1989 Jean Alesi Formula One car, which was still in those days it was a 3.5 liter V12.
Yes.
You know, and having been given by the client, please, Carlo, take it around Killarney and take it for a spin, you know, and just get inside. I mean, I've never driven a Formula One car in my life before. I mean, and I've driven a few racing Ferraris. I've had a lot of experience in 430 challenges, 360 challenges, racetracks.
Yes.
I've done all my Pilota driver courses at Fiorano, and there again, also in you know, where you've got an instructor that sits next to you and tells you just to push and go faster and faster, and those are wonderful experiences as well. They're also high up there. But sitting strapped into a 1989 Paca Formula One car, and I didn't go. I mean, I'm not such an experienced racing driver that I could drive it to its full potential. But just sitting strapped into that car and having that V12, that sound of that V12 revving at 13,000 RPM behind you and going around Killarney, doing a few laps, that was certainly the highlight of my life. Yeah.
So, and what an amazing experience it must have been.
It was indeed.
I mean, I guess it is very different, but how different is it from a normal, like, road going Ferrari, and what are just the things that stood out of that experience?
It's so very different, Martin. It's so very different. You know yourself, in a Formula One car, you know, you got to go faster to get the downforce, to keep the stability of the car. So you can't really drive it slowly, you know, and you're sitting strapped down, and you're basically lying down. Your feet are right in front of you, and you are almost in the prostrate, you know, you're lying with your head up.
Yes.
And all you can see are your wheels, your two big tires in the front, and the nose, and you got to just point and screw it and drive it, and then the stability. So the moment, you know, and Killarney is a bit of a bumpy track, especially down the back main straight. So it tends to, you know, if you're not going fast enough, you tend to get a little bit skitterish on the road. And obviously, one doesn't want to go into the kitty litter with a car like that. So
no.
But it is very different. You know, I've driven a lot of. I've driven a lot of Ferraris in my time, and you know, 599 GTO, F40, F50, all those cars, they are right up there. 458 Speciales, and in even like, let's take the 599 GTO in particular. It's a big front-engine V12 car. Car weighs quite a bit of pound. It's you know, and I've driven it around some racetracks, and you know, the first thing I do is I switch all the driver aids off. I like to feel the car. I like to know what's happening underneath me. You know, a lot of like we were talking early on about modern car with so many electronic driver aids. What people don't realize is that, you know, what is happening here with all those driver aids is that, you know, the ABS is kicking in all the time, the traction control is kicking in, and it's relying on the brake pads, and it's trying to control the car. But if you get to a certain point where you know, the laws of physics take over, you know, and if you go beyond that, if you don't know what's happening in the seat of your pants, as they say, you know, and you get to a point where you lose it, you're going to lose it big time, you know.
Yes.
Switch off all the driver aids and then drive the car. Just feel what the car is doing underneath you. You know, when it starts sliding, well, correct it or try and apply or whatever the power in whichever way you can to keep it, you know.
Yes.
That's the epitome of what a Ferrari is all about.
Yeah.
You know. My favorite Ferrari is, I mean, it's probably a lot of people would say, is obviously the F40. You know, the F40 came out in an era where it was a super light car with, it only had 515, 525 brake horsepower. but with absolutely no driver aids, no ABS, just a turbocharged engine with power that came on and it kicked you in the back like a mule in those days, you know. And if you didn't know, and if you didn't have it pointed in the right direction, you probably were going to end up doing a 180 and face the other way if you didn't know what you were doing, you know. That's the epitome of what a Ferrari to me is all about, you know. I'm sure Enzo Ferrari would agree with me as well in those days that's what a Ferrari is all about, you know. All these electronic drive aids, yes, they make the car a lot safer and you can go a lot faster and everything else, but it's kind of lost its soul in a way, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think there's obviously a lot of things that come into play that has made modern Ferraris are what they are. Even like the 430 sitting behind you. It's not sort of, you can call it a modern classic. I guess it's a bit too young to be called a modern classic, but even those with a lot of driver aids and a lot more technical assistance, I think the clientele of Ferrari probably changed over years as well, as a lot more younger people started buying Ferraris.
Definitely,
being able to afford Ferraris.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And just going off of what you see daily on Instagram with like 30-year-olds driving Ferraris, I would be very scared of them putting the traction control off of those cars, because they probably just have no clue what they're doing actually. So that's the dangerous part of it.
Yes.
So I guess
there's a safety factor built into it. Yes, I agree with you. Yes, you know, because they got so much more horsepower. And exactly that. You know, I've seen what has happened in many cases at the track. You know, we'll have a Ferrari day at Kyalami or even at Killarney as well, and you know, the guy's driven. He's basically bought the car the week before or 2 weeks before. He's done 500 kilometers or maybe not even 1,000 kilometers with the car. He's hardly driven the car. Hardly running. He comes to the racetrack, and he comes with all his glitter and all his glamour, and you know. And I'm not running anybody down. Everybody, we are all different at the end of the day. And if you can afford to buy a Ferrari, well, fantastic, great for you, and well done to you. Kudos to you and all that. But just try and comport yourself in a manner that you understand what you're dealing with, you know. Because how often have I seen that within 2 laps, that car is either against the wall, it's half smashed and it's written off.
Sure.
And we had many experiences. You tell the guy, it's got, you know, in the modern car today with the carbon ceramic brakes, you don't understand that even, you know, in the old days, the steel brakes warmed up a lot quicker.
Yeah.
The ceramic brakes take even more attention to detail. You know, if you're not aware, if you're not careful, you know, the guy comes onto the circuit, and he goes flat out, and I just think, I close my eyes and I think, just please, you know, just keep it together, you know. But he gets to the first sharp corner, and he's got enough. It comes back and he says, I ran out of brakes. Well, it's not a case that he ran out of brakes. The brakes, there wasn't enough heat into the brakes, and he couldn't stop.
That's technical.
That's technical, and he ends up against the wall. I've seen it happen so many times, Martin, so many times, you know.
But I find it fascinating. Just obviously, my area of liking expertise is more modern cars, because that's just my area, and how I grew up and so on. You know, these days you get cars like the new Porsche GT3 RS, which you can literally change suspension componentry that usually only like factory technicians or people who actually know what they're doing on the car are able to do when they go down, lift the car up, take off the wheel, adjust the suspension, like things that your normal guy just doesn't know anything about.
Exactly, yeah.
So I find it fascinating, and then obviously similar with modern day Ferraris, be it the Pista or the Competizione and so on, that brands almost allow people to drive these cars with a normal road license. It's like if you have the money, then great, like there's your ticket, go enjoy. But I haven't had experience in cars like that, but it's amazing for me that people have the opportunity to drive things like that without really knowing or being vetted to see if they have the ability to drive this. So
it's a big thing. It's a big thing, Martin. Yeah, you know, when we were as a family running the dealership and the importership eventually, and you know, I was the after sales manager, and now, you know, I used to a lot of the times, in particular, like we used to employ a new salesperson, and I used to take him out and show him what the car can do. And it's okay, obviously in a more relaxed manner around the roads, and you try and be legal as possible at it. But they come away with their eyes as big as saucers, and in that test run they are gripping the seat like in fear kind of thing,
Yes.
not understanding what the car can actually do. But the car in the hands of somebody who's capable, it's a different story. We had the philosophy we tried to, and we often did implement it with every new client that came into the Ferrari world and bought a new Ferrari, who had never, say, come from any other brand or whatever the case may be. If he's a new Ferrari owner, in those days, we used to insist, or we even used to offer it to them, a proper Pilota driver course driven at Ferrari. So the guy, it would be part of his package. He'd buy a new Ferrari, and we'd say to him, here's a 3-day Ferrari driver course at Fiorano with the best possible instructors. These are all ex-Formula One drivers.
Yes.
You're in the environment where, it's a Ferrari. You just live and breathe Ferraris. These guys, they take you around the skid pan. And like I said to you, I did all 4 levels of driver courses at Ferrari. And these guys, they plug you into the telemetry as well, so that you can test and see where all at the end of the day. So the new client walks away, having bought a new Ferrari. He's gone to Italy. He's had a beautiful experience in Italy as well, because they put you up in the nicest hotels. You're in Italy.
Lovely.
You get good food. How much better could it get?
Yes.
Really,
No, for sure.
And he comes back with this confidence in him that at least now he climbs into his Ferrari, and he's got some kind of knowledge of what the product and what the car can actually do.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they still do that today, because it's become a very expensive operation. In those days, perhaps it was a little bit more affordable. The world has become now that those things are maybe out of reach, but I don't think it should be something that should be out of reach. If you look at the value of what you're spending on a new car today, a new Ferrari in particular, they're in the 10, 12, 15 million rand bracket. To go and spend 150,000 rand or even 200,000 rand to go on a trip to Italy to go and learn how to drive your car, I would think it would be a prerequisite, especially for somebody who's never driven the car before.
Yes.
Perhaps it's still offered today. I can't speak from experience. I don't know whether that is or not, but that's how we used to look after our clients in that way.
Yeah. I know. I can't speak out of experience. I can only speak of what I've heard from people. But Porsche do it with their driver experiences. When you buy a Mercedes AMG, you also get that AMG drivers days, which I think is great.
It's fantastic.
They take you on the skid pan, take you around the track, because you need to get to know that car in situations that you're not facing on the road necessarily every day.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear more about your experience with the Ferrari driver courses or at Fiorano. You must have driven with some of the most competent drivers sort of out there, or of the past rather. But how was that experience going through the driver courses, driving at Fiorano firstly, and then being under the leadership of these amazing and competent drivers?
Martin, it's been a highlight of my life. Really, I feel I've been very fortunate to have been part of all of that and had that experience and going there. And I look back with great fond memories. And like I said, some of those people I still know. I mean, the names, I can't remember all of the names that Pilot. One particular one was Nicola Larini. He was one of the test drivers, and then earlier on there was the Amici. But just to be, when you're in that paddock at Fiorano, and there's so much history there. There's so much. It's such an amazing brand, really.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, yes, being Italian, it has really been a highlight of my life. I've been there. To go into into Montana restaurant in Maranello, and to see the places where Schumacher's been, all those guys. I never had the honor or the privilege of meeting Schumacher. I saw him in the crowds and that. But Philippe Massa, Kimi Räikkönen, I've shook hands with. I've met them on a few occasions.
Sure.
And, many of the launches of some of the special cars, like, for instance, the 430 Scuderia when it came out. We went to Fiorano, and
that's special.
Those were all very special moments. And I've got the photographs, I've got the medals, I've got the I've got the T-shirt, I've got the videos. I've been there, done it. I was also in one of the last Piloti driver courses. We did what they call a fast switchback. It's a test. You go through on the big. They've got a massive big skid pan there, and they set up a circuit on the skid pan with beacons, and they time you. You come in fast. You go through the timers, and you go through this circuit that's set up on the skid pan, and it's obviously very technical,
Yes.
and it's very narrow, and you can't touch the beacons. And the moment you touch a beacon, you lose points, or and I think it was 2007 where I actually got the quickest time through the switchback course.
wow.
And I've got the medal to prove it as well. So
It's an
that was a highlight for me, doing it in a I did it in a 430 challenge. So those were really special moments for me. And then going there with my clients as well.
Yes.
We'd go out, we'd take a client, one or two clients, and they would be part of. They'd be like I was said. They would be part of the program where they bought a car, and you take them and you show them experience and introduce them to the right people. And those very special moments. Yeah.
I can imagine. Have you had any past racing experience, or haven't you dabbled much in motorsport?
No, I haven't had any past racing experience. I can't call myself a racing driver. No, certainly not. I never really, as much as one grows up, and when you're in that sort of, I don't know what age you are, Martin, but young 20s, early 20s, mid 20s, and I was, at that stage of my life, it was all about building the business. And as much as I would have liked to have gone into motorsport, there wasn't really an opportunity for it. And I dabbled a bit more on motorbikes at that time. I used to go fast on motorbikes. I used to go around Killarney and did a few rider courses with motorbikes. So I still ride. I've still got my Ducati. I still ride my bike now and then. And I always believe that there's just no comparison to the power to weight ratio of a motorbike, of a superbike, in comparison to even the latest Ferrari at the time.
Yeah.
It's just it's amazing that. But no, I never really had no motorsport experience in my side. Yeah.
When it comes to superbikes or bikes in general, I am not that into bikes because my family's not that into bikes and not always for it. My dad's saying was that you can have a bike, but it has to have 4 doors. So that's been the saying.
Yeah.
But from your experience, your Ducati is a very special bike and obviously very, very competent, but in the hands of a skilled driver. What does a bike offer you that a car doesn't?
Sheer acceleration.
Yeah,
and I guess that's what it comes down to. Okay, the difficult thing is to keep the front wheel down. But it's the sheer speed, and I guess it's you're exposed. You are strapped. You are sitting on top of a machine that you got a leather suit, but there's nothing else around you. And if you're going to hit something, you're going to hit it with your body. Never mind anything else. So So, but it's the power to weight ratio. What it comes down to at the end of the day, the sheer acceleration. My Ducati. Okay, it's a 11-year-old Ducati, but it's still, it weighs 180 kilos, and when you twist that throttle, you got to watch that. You make sure that you got to keep the front wheel down, because that bike will lift so quickly.
Yes.
Before you know it.
Just because of the power.
Yeah. It's a different experience altogether. It's the leaning, it's the going around the corners, and just biking it's special. Very
I can imagine. I can imagine. I want to speak a bit about what you do on a daily with your business at the moment. So maybe talk us through, what do you do with, you obviously have a bunch of Ferraris being worked on, but in different respects, and each having a different need or service being done to it. So what are you doing currently at the moment, and then also maybe chat about some of your favorite builds you've had over the years and what that entailed.
Look, what I'm doing currently at the moment is I run my own business. I have my own Ferrari workshop. I'm an independent Ferrari workshop, basically. That's where I am. I've got my years of experience. I've got my equipment. I've got my Ferrari special tools. So what I'm doing at the moment is what I've always done previously with Ferraris. I service Ferraris. I've got my clients that support me, and the cars vary from cars from the 60s up until probably the last cars that I can still comfortably that I would like to work on, or I do work on, up to about a 458 Speciale. Okay. I have the diagnostic equipment to be able to diagnose problems with those cars, and so I work on. My workshop is open on a daily basis. I work here 5 days a week, and I do servicing. As you can see behind me, I've got a 430 Spider, I've got a 599, I've got a 512 BBI boxer that I've done work on. I've got a 348 in the state of the engine out, doing a bell service. Dinos, servicing and looking after. I've got clients that support me that also live out of country. One particular client who lives in Singapore.
Sure.
He leaves his car with me here, and he hears once or twice a year, and then he comes and drives his Dino. I'm busy with a major rebuild now, which people might have been following me on Instagram. It's the 308 GTB. That was a barn find. We pulled it out of a backyard here in the southern suburbs here that had been it was covered under a tarpaulin, and it was in a shocking state. I mean, rust. The body was, you could put your hands through in certain positions. So it's been a major rebuild on that one. I've done a complete rebuild, mechanical, and I'm in the process of also, I've got a Dino 246 GT at the panel shop at the moment. That's also a full bolt and nut, and that's busy being painted. So
wide
variety, yeah. And I like I said, I work up to 458 Speciales and that sort of thing, because that is that was where my training ended as well. You know, if somebody had to come to me today with a F8 or a 488, I could get the diagnostics. So it's not impossible. It's just that I don't really know my way around them as well as I would like to. You know, and I'm a stickler for doing things in the correct manner, and I'm going to be brutally honest with the client, and I say, look, you know, at this stage, rather take your car back to the dealer, because they're supposed to have the right people there. They're supposed to have the technicians who have been trained to work on your car. And if you really, really are stuck and you really want to come to me, well, I'll find my way around, and I'll do something for you. You know, I'll fix you up, whatever. I've got friends in Italy. I've got contacts. So if I can, whatever information I can get it. But I like to stay, you know, like I said to you earlier on, you know, when a guy brings me a Daytona or a Dino, or it's the carburation side of things where the modern technician today, you know, if you had to show him a V12 Ferrari Daytona engine with the bank of 6 Weber 40 DCNs, and he's going to take one look at this thing, and he's probably not going to even know where to start how to tune this thing. Never mind get it running properly, you know. So, yes, I consider myself quite unique in that manner. You know, so that's what I do at the moment. And I love it. It's my own business, and I've kind of traded on. Well, it is my name. You know, we came from Viglietti Motors, which was a combined. We were the 7 brothers, and we were legendary. You know, for Viglietti Motors, it was an institution. You know, I mean, whether you brought an Alfa there or a Fiat or whatever. Yes, it grew to the stage where once we became Ferrari importers, then that's when the Ferrari's requirements were we had to have a very separate Ferrari workshop. And you worked only on Ferraris in that section. You know, you had to have your corporate colors. And even in those days, they were quite strict about it. We had an upstairs workshop where we did only Ferraris, and we had a downstairs workshop where we focused on a lot of Alphas and that sort of things. But so I'm now Carlo Viglietti Motors, which is my name. and that's what I do.
Extension of the family business.
Yes,
if you
and
want
I'm
to put it that way.
basically it's a legend that I'm still carrying that flag. You know, it's what we did then and what I still do now. My older brothers, a lot of them have retired, and they are still dabbling around in a few different things, you know, in different aspects of mechanical side. But I'm still very much here, and I love what I do. It's a passion of mine, and I've got my clients, and this is my, as my wife will often say, I'm going to work to have fun. You know, this is my playground. You know?
Is it even work?
If it is even work.
Yeah. It's awesome to hear. I think I find it so honorable when someone working their life on something is still involved, sort of, you know, as late as possibly they can be, just because they love what they do.
Yes.
So it's never really been like work. It's always just been life. My life has included this, and for some reason people pay me to do what I like, which is nice.
Which is a bonus.
But we spoke before the podcast a bit about the Daytona build you did, I think 6-7 years ago or so on.
Yes.
Tell me about what that entails, especially also imagine you're speaking to someone like me who doesn't know what working on a car really looks like.
You know, Martin, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you take a car of that era and you strip it down. It's actually very basic. But, you know, that Daytona in particular, one of my very good clients that's been part of my, I've had for probably the last 30 years of my working on Ferraris. So we've gone through a lot of stories together. We've gone to Italy together. We've shared many experiences. And he was always after wanting to buy a Daytona, and he said, Nicola, we've got to find the right Daytona. And we were chasing this Daytona down for about 2 or 3 years, and every time we wanted to buy it, the seller would have a particular price, and then we would go and negotiate, and then another price would change, and then he would say no, he wanted more for the car, and then we would walk away from the deal. And eventually it got to the point where, you know, I said to the client, I said, look, you know, if you really want a Daytona, just pay him his price and let's get it car and let's start this project. And this car came at the time where I had already Viglietti motors had already I had left Viglietti motors at the time. So there's a bit of a story behind that as well, but we can talk about that another time. So I was already an independent Ferrari operator, but I was working at an independent workshop here in the foreshore, who was actually an Alpha dealer at the time. And he set up a small section of his workshop that I said, look, you can come and I can set up and I can work on my Ferraris. So we went to buy this car in Joburg. We brought it down, and I started stripping it while I was working for this Alpha dealer in my Ferrari workshop. And you know, you strip a car line, like I said to you, it's quite there's no rocket science to it. You know, it's a car of that era where once you've taken the interior out, you take the dashboard out, you take the seats out, you take the carpeting out, you take the engine out, you strip it down. You end up with a whole lot of bits and pieces and boxes of stuff. And so we said, and like I do my restorations, I always say to them, look, we've got to go to the bottom of it. We've got to take it right down. And it wasn't the correct color. We wanted to change the color. So the moment you're changing the color of the car, you've got to take everything off, beadings, everything, and you've got to then sandblast it down to the metal. So we got to the stage where we had the car painted here at a panel shop here in Durbanville, and my life was taking a different route at that stage, and I was offered a situation where I could go into partnership with a business person in Johannesburg who was running a racing side of. He was more into motorsport. And he said, come, Carlo, let's set up an independent Ferrari service center. You know, he had the workshop, he had the backup, he had a few technicians as well, and it sounded like a good, which it was. It was a good proposition for me because I also had a lot of clients in Johannesburg, and I thought, well, okay, let's go for this. So halfway through this project with the Daytona, I'm suddenly moving from Cape Town to Johannesburg. And I've got to take the car with me now.
Yes.
So now the client, and if you had to put yourself in the client's shoes, you've got to be a brave person in offering, because you've now invested a couple of good few million into this car. Now the guy that you've entrusted to do the job is now moving workshop, and now the car is in a completely stripped down state. So there's bins of parts. The engine is in pieces. The car everything is now being packed into a trailer and now shipped up to Johannesburg. So we get to Johannesburg and we continue the process. But in all of that moving and backwards and forwards, and I still showed him at the end of the project, I said, there was a handful of little stuff left. I said, this is what's left over after I reassemble your car. We never lost a trim, we never lost a screw, we never lost a bolt, we never lost... The car went back together, and it was just quite a journey, if I may say. Quite an exciting journey and an interesting journey as well. We actually had a story on Carte Blanche. Actually, we did a 10-minute little story, and I had the pleasure of Derek Watts. We went around the circuit with Derek. Derek was driving the car as well. So it's some fun memories at that time.
That car has been through quite a lot.
Yeah.
It must have been such a stressful process moving that car to Joburg.
Just packing it and going, it was very stressful, I must say. But, one has to believe that what you're doing you're doing it in the best possible manner, and you take great care, and it came together. It was fine. So
I'm intrigued. What was actually left after that build?
Rusted bolts, couple of screws that had to replace. Really just the bolts and nuts that I get original. Everything in those days was cadmium plated, especially the bolts and the suspension parts. And cadmium plating is not something that gets done often today. I think it's a process that I'm not quite sure of the technical side of it, but I think it's quite there's a safety issue about it. But anyway, so now you can buy in Europe and in America the nuts and bolts that are part of the suspension that are cadmium plated. So they come factory. So
Okay, so it was just a few odd stuff.
Nothing
like, this needed to fit. We don't know where.
No. Like I said, it was nuts and bolts and screws and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that is a special build.
Stainless steel screws. There are companies now. If you go onto the internet now, it's amazing because, in particular, look, restoration, classic cars, as you might know, there's a great calling for classic cars. A lot of people are. It's something of an era that has passed. I've been to quite a few Ferrari concourses events, and various speakers have spoken. And if one has to look at the time, if you look at from what is considered the classic car, what era should you say were the best classic cars produced? And if you look from the 30s or the 20s, and you take a wide spectrum all the way up until currently today, I can't say honestly that today there are any really classic cars being made. Yes, there are a lot of special cars being made. Yes. And maybe one day, maybe in 20, 30 years' time, they will become collectible. I don't know. But if you look at today and what goes on auction at all these big auction houses in Europe and America, it's probably from early 60s to the early 80s, late 80s, maybe early 90s, The F50s, the F40s, the 288 GDOs. I'm speaking only for Ferrari.
Yes.
There are Jags, there are Aston Martins, there are a lot of other stuff out there, MGs. But the world has gone crazy about classic cars. And that is the era of the classic car, in my opinion. Daytona, 69, those cars, those are the classic cars, Dinos. Today, they're telephone numbers, the numbers that, and my wife says to me, but where's the value in this, and you look at it, and people pay these kind of silly numbers
ridiculous
for these cars,
amounts,
at the end of the day, like I said, it's a car. It's really nothing really. There's no rocket science. It's very special, very basic. But that is the era of the classic cars,
And for some reason, people just add so much value to sentiment and a story.
Absolutely.
And, the car consists of nuts and bolts and stuff that move and like belts and whatever.
Yes.
But like that Daytona, it wouldn't be as valuable as it is today if it wasn't for that story and what it went through.
Exactly.
People just love to attach value to that.
And the previous owners of the cars as well.
Yes.
A lot of those cars were in the hands of
sure.
celebrities, and a lot of the people that were out there were the well-known figures of life, racing drivers. You know, it's the history of the car. If you've got a documented history of the car, where it came from, or who were the previous owners, and if it's all there, it adds such provenance to that car as well. You know, so
it does make it very special.
It makes it very special, yeah.
So, just sort of last point on the Daytona. How long does a full restoration like that take? Because you want to do an excellent job, and it's obviously an old and very valuable car, but how long are we talking about here? Because I think many may have a misconception of what it means to have a full restoration.
Yeah. Look, if one has to say dedicate yourself to doing a restoration, and there was no time constraints or no financial constraints, let's say, because often it's all driven by cash at the end of the day. You know, it's an expensive operation.
Yes.
One can say comfortably you could do a full restoration 18 months to 2 years. That's on average a project would take about 2 years. So, you know, in the last couple of years we've had a few issues with, especially when it came to COVID-19 and a lot of things. A lot of the world went upside down. A lot of things went on hold. The 308 that I'm busy with now is into its 4th year. So the Daytona, I think at the end of the day, it just took a bit longer than 2.5 to 3 years, because obviously I also moved, and you know, setting up in a new workshop took a little bit more effort, a little bit more time. You get to know people, you get to know suppliers. Who can I use for the brakes? Who can I, you know, I need to get somebody that can make me new brake lines. I need somebody that can. So I had to feel my way around Johannesburg a little bit. So there was a bit of a, but generally you can say comfortably 18 to 2 years, 18 months to 24 months is the time frame.
Okay.
And that is if the guy says, look, like I said to you as well, the cost wise, I can say to them comfortably, it's 1,000 hours of labor, and we're looking at roughly what the paintwork could cost. But also there again, we need to take it down to metal. We can thumbs up a few figures, but be in mind that if you are going to quote around the 1.5 million rand for a quotation, it could quite easily end up being the 2 million rand.
Yes.
So cover yourself for that. You also don't want to scare the guy away and say, listen, you know, it's going to cost you 3 million rand. Maybe that might be a better tactic at the end of the day, and then it only does cost him 2 million rand. So, but one tries to be as honest as possible.
Yeah.
And you know, we go through the process, and a lot of the times, the client also wants the car in a manner that he can also certify the car. In other words, he can go back to Ferrari. You can go back to a Ferrari dealer. If I've done a full restoration on a Ferrari,
yes,
being an unauthorized Ferrari dealer as such, I'm independent. I can't take my restorations and go to Ferrari and ask them to certify the car, because I'm not a Ferrari dealer anymore. But the client can take his car and go to a dealer, and then they can go through the process of certifying the car. In other words, saying, okay, is this a matching numbers car? Has the restoration done in the correct manner? Is the color correct? Is the interior correct? And they'll inspect the car. They'll take a whole lot of photographs. They'll send it to Ferrari, and then Ferrari will they'll sit around the table and they'll discuss it and say, okay, well,
do we put a stamp on it?
Do we put a stamp of giving it a stamp of saying this Ferrari is a certified Daytona, Dino, or whatever it might be, a 308. You can do that, you see. So a client will bring me a car, and I will say to him, well, look, okay, I'm just looking at it now, and I can see the ignition system, somebody has changed it. They've kind of bastardized it, or they've made it into a different, non-original ignition system. You want at the end of the day, once I've done my restoration, if you want me to certify the car, then understand that we need to then go back to the original ignition system that the car came with. And I'm very fortunate in that sense that my contacts, I've got contacts in Italy that, in particular when it comes to the electronics, I've got a particular guy. He's related. Enzo Ferrari had a his go-to guy. You know, he was like his second in charge, and he's related. So there's a strong connection. This guy only does Ferraris. He works independently. He's got his own workshop in Italy in Modena, and he rebuilds wiring harnesses for all Ferraris. If I go to him and I say, I've got a whatever car, I give him the chassis number, left-hand drive, right-hand drive. I need a new complete wiring harness made for this car with new relays, new ECUs or whatever I need. What I'm talking about now is the Dino that I'm busy with that's at a paint shop now. It had a completely wrong ignition system. He said, Carlo, no problem. We build it up exactly like original, you know, and and it's a car, and it's done to factory standards. The color coding of the wire is the right color. The plugs, everything. He's a unique human being and we are all the same. We've all got gray hair. We're all at the same stage of our lives, you know. And one can only think when this guy's no longer around, who's going to do that kind of thing, you know?
Yes. It's
coming to an end, you know. So, like I said, I work to very strict parameters when it comes to that. So the client can comfortably take his restoration job off. He can take it to Europe. He wants to go and do the Mille Miglia. He wants to go travel the world with his car. He can go to any Ferrari dealer worldwide, and he'll go there and he'll say, I would like my car certified. And I can comfortably, confidently say that there won't be any issues with it. Because I know my products. I know my product to the extent that down to the last nut and bolt, what needs to be cadmium plated, what needs to be chromed. If there was very little chroming in those days. What color are the tappet covers?
Yes.
Were they crackle black or were they crackle red or what were they? You know, and all these kind of things. So that's it. Yes, it makes me in a very good position, a very strong position in that manner. But that's what it comes down to. You know, after 40 years of working on the brand, that's what it comes down to. That the client can confidently come to me, knowing that the product is going to take the process is going to take 2 to 3 years. But at the end of the day, he's got an investment. It's only growing in value.
Yes.
Sometimes there's a dip in the market. Who knows? You know, it's like the stock market. It goes up and down. Certain models, you know, yes, if we take the 308 today isn't worth it. The value has come down a little bit. But a fully restored one in the manner that I will have finished at the end of the day, there isn't going to be another one around like that. So it is a priceless object at the end of the day. You know, it's
and you can be very proud of your work.
Yeah.
I love that. No, I find it fascinating what you do, just because it's so far from my skill level or area of expertise. But Carlo, I want to thank you for your time and the conversation and the stories and everything. I think with your experience and what you've been through and all of the work you've done with Ferraris and in the industry, one can go on for hours just chatting about everything that everything that it consists of. But thank you for your time and thank you for the work you do. I mean, there is, like, for anything, whether it be a car or a house or anyone that does something excellently, like, it's honorable, and it's always, like, you know, deserving of a round of applause.
Thank you.
So well done for the work you've done as well.
Thank you, Martin. Yes.
And I'm sure there's many fruitful years still ahead for you and your company.
Thank you.
And I always just end it off saying, rather love cars because it's better than drugs.
I couldn't agree with you more than that.
Okay, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.